Hello and welcome back to the demo portion of our lecture series. Um, what I did was I took the charts that I created that are in your study guide and I put them into PowerPoints. So don't get too confused. I know the color's a little different. You guys on the sheet don't. It's just a plain Jane um, table, but for some odd reason in the PowerPoints they gave me funky colors. Tried to change those, but when I did, it kind of changed the um, uh, dimensions of the table. So we're just going to work with it. Um, the first exercise we have in your study guide is exercise 12-1, and it's on page 590. Um, Ideally, I would love if you guys would pause the video, give this a shot, and then come back and get the answers. That would be ideal. So I'm going to assume that you're going to do that. So go ahead, pause the video, give it a try, and then we'll come back and go. We'll come back and go over the answers together. Okay. So I'm assuming you did that. So we have two cases, right? Case A, case B, and the instructions tell us that, hey, these are two independent decisions, right? A is by itself, B is by itself. And in case A, they say that the company has a idle machine, or I'm sorry, they have a machine, B100. It has no idle capacity, right? It's the constrained resource. Management wants to buy a new model, model B300. They're going to use B300 to they're going to use B300 in addition to model B100. The old B100 machine will continue to be used as it was before. The new model B300 machine is going to be used to actually expand production. Okay, they tell us that it's going to increase the company's production. It's going to increase their sales. The increase in volume will be large enough to require increases in fixed selling expense and in general administrative overhead, but not in the fixed manufacturing overhead. Now those are important, okay? And when we get to them, I'll explain why. Case B says that, hey, the old B100 machine, it's not the company's constraint, but management, they're thinking about replacing it and buying the new B300 machine, right? The reason why is because they say that there are potential savings in direct material costs with this new machine. The B100 machine would be sold. This change would have no effect on production or sales other than some savings in direct material cost due to less waste. What we got to do is we have a list of items or a list of financial impacts, right? Sales, direct material, direct labor. We have to say if they're relevant or irrelevant in regards to each case. Now, remember the key thing is here. Any financial number or any situation that differs between two alternatives, it's relevant. Okay, it's relevant. If it does not differ, if it's the same between two scenarios, it's irrelevant. That's number one. Number two, remember we said at the beginning of the lecture, we said that, hey, it was key concept one, right? You have to recognize that making a decision involves two or more alternatives, right? Well, since these are two independent cases, it's not case A or case B, right? In case one, it's either we buy the new machine or we don't buy it, okay? In case B, it's the same thing. Either we buy the new machine and get rid of the old one, okay? So let's look at the first one, sales revenue. Just for case A, is it relevant or irrelevant? Now hopefully you said relevant. And it is, because they tell us under case A that by adding this new model B300 machine, it's going to increase the company's production and sales. Okay, so there's a difference. Increase sales. We either keep the machine we have and just keep running, or we buy a new machine and increase our sales revenue. It is relevant. Okay. Now let's look at case B, and let's look at the same thing, sales revenue. Well, case B says, hey, if we get this new machine, there's virtually no effect on production or sales, other than we might save some direct material costs due to less waste. So in case B, sales revenue is irrelevant because it doesn't differ. In case B, whether we keep machine 100 or sell it and get B300, our sales revenue is going to stay the same regardless. Okay. Now let's look at direct materials cost, right? Let's look at case A. Is direct materials relevant for case A? Well, to answer this question, we have to say, will direct materials change if we buy the new machine and add it to production, or if we just keep producing like we are and using the B100? It will change, because the problem tells us we are buying this new machine to expand production. We're going to make more. Direct materials increase in direct proportion to changes in levels of activity. So since we're going to increase production and sales, we're obviously going to increase direct material. So in case A, it is relevant. For case B says that we're just basically thinking about swapping out machines. There's no difference in production or sales, but we will save, if we buy this new machine, we will save on direct material costs because this new machine's more efficient. So in this case, the decision to either keep running on the old machine or sell the old machine and buy a new one, direct material costs will change. It's different under both of those scenarios. So, see, this is what I was hoping would not happen by moving it to PowerPoint. Back on task, sorry. So direct materials are relevant for case B. So let's look at direct labor, right? Direct labor. Will direct labor change? Well, let's look at case A. Of course it will change. My choices are keep running as I'm running or add a new machine. If I add the new machine, I'm going to increase production. I'm going to be incurring more costs because direct labor is variable, increases with direct proportion with changes in levels of activity. There's a change in that cost between keeping machine 1 or keeping machine 1 and adding machine 300. So yes, that is relevant. Now let's look at B, case B. Case B says nothing's going to change other than direct materials. Well, since the fact that the direct labor cost is going to remain the same, regardless if we keep machine 100 or sell machine 100 and buy and use machine 300. So in that case, direct material for case B is irrelevant. Now let's look at variable manufacturing overhead. Hopefully you're getting the idea here and you're going to say, hey, that's relevant. And you'd be right. It is relevant. Okay? The reason why it's relevant is because we're adding a new machine, we're increasing our costs, right? We're going to increase that variable manufacturing overhead. Because we're increasing production, it's a variable cost. It automatically goes up. In this situation, our decision is to keep what we got or add a new machine and produce more. Well, variable manufacturing overhead is going to be different under each of those scenarios. It is relevant. Under case B, sorry about that, guys. Under case B says nothing changes regardless if we keep the machine we got or if we sell that machine and buy a new one. Variable costs remain the same under each of those circumstances. It's irrelevant. Okay. The next one we have is depreciation on model B100 machine. Right off the bat, you know depreciation is a sunk cost. Sunk costs are always irrelevant. It's irrelevant under case A, and it's irrelevant under case B. Now let's look at the book value of model machine A. So the book value is the value that it's on the books, right? Is that value going to change at all if we go from keeping machine 100 and adding B300? No, the cost is still going to remain this. The book value is still going to remain the same. That's irrelevant. It's a sunk cost anyways. Okay. Same thing in B. Irrelevant. Now let's look at case A. Okay. Case A wants us to look at the disposal of model B100. Are we, under either of the scenarios, either just keep B100 or keep B100 and add B300, is the disposal value going to change? No, it's not. It's irrelevant. Okay. Under case B, however, the choices are: I keep machine B100, or I sell B100 and buy machine B300. In that example, disposal value, and that's just the amount of money we're going to get by selling this machine. That's what disposal value is. It is relevant. Why? Well, because if we decide not to buy this new B300 machine, guess what? We don't have a disposal value because we're not selling the machine, we're keeping it and using it. However, if we decide to buy B300, we're going to sell B100. So we have a disposal value under that circumstance. So in that circumstance, we say that under case B, disposal value is relevant. Okay? The market value, the cost of B300, is it relevant or is it irrelevant? Well, let's look at case A. Case A says I either keep going as I'm going, meaning I'm just going to use B100 and just keep working, or I'm going to keep B100 and I'm going to add B300. In that case, the market value is definitely relevant, right? Because the choices are I either buy it or I don't buy it. Well, the cost of that machine differs under each of those scenarios, right? Let's look at case B. Case B says I either keep machine B100, or the other scenario is I sell it and I buy B300. In that case, market value is also relevant. Let's look at fixed manufacturing overhead general. Is this relevant or irrelevant? Well, if we reread case A, they tell us that the increase in volume will be large enough to require increases in fixed selling expense and in general administrative overhead, but not fixed manufacturing overhead. So, in this case, they're talking about the general overhead. And the problem tells us that, hey, general administrative overhead is not going to, is going to change. It is going to increase, okay? Since we see general there, we're going to say, yep, the circumstance told us that general administrative overhead is going to change between two scenarios. That is relevant. Now, if you didn't look at general and you just saw fixed manufacturing overhead and said, nope, it's irrelevant because it doesn't differ, that's fine. The reason why it's fine is because it's your interpretation, and the way the book wrote this problem, it is not very good. Okay? So that one could go either way depending on if you're saying, oh, it says general and it says general will change. You might read it and say, nope, it specifically says fixed manufacturing overhead. I read fixed manufacturing overhead, it's irrelevant. Either way's fine with me. Okay? Under case B, it is irrelevant. Selling or fixed, selling, and administrative. Well, under case A, they tell us that if we buy this new machine, we're going to have an increase in that fixed selling expense. So in that case, it is relevant. Under case B, it's irrelevant because they tell us it doesn't matter if we buy the new machine or just keep up with the old one, nothing's really going to change other than direct material. And the last one is general administrative overhead. Again, the problem here says that it's general. Case A says it will change. It is relevant. Under case B, it is irrelevant because they tell us it will not change. Okay? So if you're still a little confused on what's relevant, what's irrelevant, the key is to make sure you understand the problem. What are we doing? What are our choices? Once you got that under your belt, you think, okay, does that cost or revenue, does that differ under each of the scenarios that I have here? If it does, it's relevant. If it does not differ, then it's irrelevant. Okay, so that's problem exercise 12-1. When we come back in our next video, I'm going to try and break these up. I'm going to do one problem per video just to make it a little easier on you guys. I'm assuming that will. So in our next video, we'll come back and do exercise 12-2. Okay, so tune back in for that one.